Hey guys, I'm Paper Skies, and this is a color-based breakdown on my track Broken with Azuria Sky. Here's a quick preview of the drop. So starting off with the drop here, there's like four main sounds that are kind of creating the entire drop, and starting off with this one, this is kind of the main bass sound. So most of what's creating the sound is just going to be a lot of the phaser movement and then the actual wavetables themselves, which I'm pretty sure are just Virtual Riot wavetables from his Volume 2 pack. The phaser movement giving it a lot of the vowel-y kind of texture, and then this vocodex after, which is doing a lot of the chonky sort of sounds. If I play those just together with all the effects off. They're the ones without the vocodex and disperser. And then all of these other two kind of slots here are just really meant for a cleanup, and then some other sounds later on in the drop that just help give some tonality. The upwards movement of the bass is coming from this little shift warp thing here, which is actually just a slight modulation of the sync. You can get a lot of really cool pitch bending sort of effects if you have two oscillators and then just move the sync on one of your basses. Moving on to the next sound, I just layered some Virtual Riot pads on top of this here with a lot of mixing involved in them just to make it nice and clean. And they're panning from the left and right sides to give it some stereo width that you might not notice. You can get these sounds yourself just by taking a lot of melodic stuff, pulse stretching it, throwing on a bunch of reverbs, delays, even like a crystallizer if you want to give it a bit of texture, and just rendering those out for later use can be super helpful down the road. And then the bass line, which is literally just a saw wave with some bright noise, distortion, and a lot of OTT compression. Then finally, this is one thing I actually picked up from just listening to a lot of heavier dubstep, even some tear out stuff, is this little, what I call a pacer in the back. It's just like a really airy sound that keeps up the pace and makes the flow a lot more prevalent. Then this one's super simple. This is literally just taking a saw wave, doing a quick volume automation, another automation with the highs just to make sure the lows aren't getting all muddy, and then a comb filter, which creates all of the dispersed kind of noise. Now we've got our drum line, which is all these layers here. So you take all those layers, you stick them together, and this is the drop you get from it. So moving on to the intro, this is a lot more focused on kind of building a scene and just placing the listener into an environment that has a lot of like stereo fields and random panning things going on, so it feels real and not just like a song. Let's take a listen to this bit so far.
For me, but I can't go anymore.
So to start off, we have these rising synths, which are kind of just playing the chord progression and setting the atmosphere of the tune. These are just some basic saws going through a low-pass filter here, which is creating the pluck effect with some hyper chorus, compression, yada yada. The automations, I'd say, here is what creates a lot of the movement feel. This cutoff is really adjusting the amount of high end that's kind of being allowed into the sound. And then this reverb here is making it sound like it's kind of pulling out every once in a while, which is what I wanted to happen after the sub cuts out. All the other sounds are following the same sort of rise and then fade out pattern to make it feel like it has a bit more of a flow. There's some water being layered here in the stereo field, and this atmosphere, which just gives a nice texture. Then here's the drums on top, which have a lot of panning just to make sure the whole stereo space is being used. And I'm actually low passing the rides when this little clap thing hits to just emphasize that underwater feel even more. So now all that together without the vocals. When writing a song with vocals, this is something that I learned from an 85 video. It's really important to make sure that you're giving your vocal room to sit and breathe and be present in the mix. You shouldn't have to have a super loud vocal in order for it to come through in your track. It should be able to hit a very minimal range and still feel very clear just by using proper compression and leaving space in the mix and making sure things aren't clashing. Finally, moving forward to the vocals themselves. We've got all these little automations here that are controlling slight bits of it, but here's what they sound like on their own.
I'm lost, trying to find who's there for me, but I can't go anymore.
So the vocals actually help in themselves to fill up a lot of space that's kind of missing in the stereo mid-range in this mix. And I do that through just automating a lot of the reverb effects and creating a lot of swelling. Azuria Sky in particular has a really soft voice that sits a lot in the high range, so I had to make sure that that lower mid tonality that she's kind of missing was still getting filled up. Started off just by cleaning up her voice with a Pro G. This is a gate effect to make sure that none of the white noise of her mic is being picked up. Then we've got some OTT and a Pro C2, which is just for minimal compression. Then strangely enough, her mic actually had this weird kind of side presence. It almost sounded like there was a bit of a side feel that was being recorded somehow. So I separated that a little bit by using a mid-side EQ. Just right-clicking any of these knobs can easily do that and hitting the side option. Then worked with the dynamics by using a Ozone dynamic, free stereo enhancer, and Ozone imager. Once all the basic reverb and kind of delay effects were done, here's the result that we get.
I'm lost, trying to find who's there for me, but
And here's kind of our major effects that are coming on. This is that big swell that I was talking about. You can see how much the shimmer does when it actually lets in the reverb here.
I'm lost, trying to find who's there for me, but I can't go anymore.
And then it just fades up here at the end. What the shimmer and the reverb that I have applied here previous are going to do is fill up the side range that her voice is missing. Because when working with vocals, you're typically going to get your vocals from the vocalist as just a straight mono take. And how you fill up that side presence is not by like forcing it into stereo or anything, but just adding reverb and making sure that it's not interfering with the core vocal. You can see in this last EQ here that there's not a lot of this low mid space, and that's where that sub bass and that really thick kind of rising synth are going to fill up.
I'm lost, trying to find who's there for me.
And that's essentially it. I know that was a pretty quick breakdown, but if anyone has any direct questions about this track or wants to see any other videos on some of my other songs, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll get back to those as soon as I can. And thanks for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos, and I'm really hoping that for 2021 I can start rolling out just a lot more YouTube content and help a lot of you guys out with your production. So until the next one, thanks.